Dansby Swanson's third year is in the books with the Chicago Cubs. Did he live up to his contract? We're going to break it all down. We're going to talk about his stats in 2025, the contract overview, and the value versus the expectations that we've had for Dansby Swanson. Let's talk about it all right here on this episode of Chicago Cubs Central. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, your number one spot for all things Chicago Cubs. I'm your host, Mike Jones. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I appreciate each and every last one of you that make this your spot, your home for your Cubs content, whether that be on Spotify, whether that be on X, whether that be on YouTube, or whether that be on Spotify or Apple. Thank you all so much. It means the world to us here on Chi-Town Sports Central. Make sure if this is your first time watching that you like, share, and subscribe, because we have so much more content coming for you. Even though it's the winter, it don't stop over here on Central. We're going to keep bringing you that content each and every day. So make sure that you guys tune in for that. Now, we have to talk about what I would like to call maybe the linchpin in the Chicago Cubs. Somebody that kind of kicked off the renaissance of this new era of Chicago Cubs, of one of the first big names that we brought to the team. Dansby Swanson is his name. Dansby Swanson signed a 7-year, $177 million deal with the Chicago Cubs in December of 2022. Now, a lot of that had to do, before they played for the Atlanta Braves, obviously the team that drafted him, brought him up. He actually won a World Series with the Atlanta Braves. Dansby is one of those people that is a locker room leader. He is one of those guys that's a captain of the team, and he is someone who steadies the team. Now, Dansby Swanson was a lot more serious when he was a part of the Atlanta Braves than I feel like than he is with the Chicago Cubs, nicknaming him the name Lieutenant Dans because obviously of a Forrest Gump, but also because he also took baseball very serious when it came to being there for the Atlanta Braves. So he moved on from the Atlanta Braves after the 2022 season. Coincidentally enough, his wife came to play soccer for Chicago also. So at the same time, he had that. I mean, it just made sense for both of them to be here. And I think they are getting ready to welcome a child into the world, if not have already done so. So with that being said, it made sense for Dansby Swanson to be here, but how much sense does his contract make? And how has he performed with such a large deal? It's one of the larger deals the Chicago Cubs have ever given out. 7 years, $177 million. At the time, a lot of people thought this was a steal of a deal due to the fact of the way that Dansby Swanson was able to play when he was playing for the Atlanta Braves. Now, under the Chicago Cubs, we have seen a little regression. Let's just be honest about it. We've seen some regression from Dansby Swanson. We're going to look at his 2025 stats. We're also going to look at his contract and how much he's getting paid. And then I'm going to ask you guys your thoughts. So with that being said, in 2025, Dansby Swanson compiled a batting average of 244. He hit 24 home runs. He had 77 RBIs. He had an OPS of 717. In his whole entire career with the Cubs, he has a batting average of 243, 62 home runs, 223 RBIs, and 455 appearances for the team. So again, Dansby Swanson isn't somebody that's going to shock you or wow you with his offense. He will have spurts where he goes on heaters. So he'll have weeks where he's the best hitter on the team, where he's just seeing the ball well. Balls coming up, balls coming off the bat well. It's either heading into the stands or he's finding a gap somewhere and he's getting those base hits and he's getting on base. Once he gets on base, he is still fairly a good runner, even though he's starting to get a little bit older. So with that being said, you look at all these things, you say to yourself, Dansby Swanson, is still pretty decent of a player, right? Right. I do think that his defense saves him a lot. That's why the thumbnail for this video was Dansby Swanson catching a ball, jumping up and catching a ball that would have still robbing somebody of a base hit. Now, What I do want to bring to your attention is the fact that his defense actually really helped the Chicago Cubs. More importantly, I go back when I think about Dansby Swanson now, I go back to obviously the wild card round against the San Diego Padres, where Dansby Swanson, literally his glove between him and Nico Horner and Michael Busch and Matt Shaw for that, the whole infield, those gloves swallowed up every single hit that the Padres tried to muster. Every time it looked like the Padres were going to go on a run and that they were going to end up taking the Chicago Cubs out, Dansby Swanson glove did the trick. It was the steadying factor in that series that helped the Chicago Cubs feel like no matter what they went up against, they could overcome it because of their defense. So Dansby Swanson's defense does lend to the fact that even though he actually did not qualify for a Gold Glove this season on the 2025 season, he still was one of the better shortstops in the MLB. So when you look at it like that, you have to understand that that's a lot of where his contract and his pay came from. That's why he got such the deal that he got. Was because of his defensive reputation. But another reason was his leadership. Let make no mistake about it. Dansby Swanson is a captain. He's a leader. He is somebody that leads the charge for the Chicago Cubs. Him and Ian Happ lead the teams out of the dugout. Ian Happ, and Carson Kelly lead the teams out of the dugout onto the field when it's time to play ball. He is somebody that is in the clubhouse, in the ear of players, holding players accountable, as well as talking players up, as well as coaching players up. I can absolutely see Dansby Swanson, once he is done with his playing career, being a manager of a team. It could be the Atlanta Braves. He could go back, or he could be a manager of the Chicago Cubs. It would not shock me either way. Dansby Swanson just has that aura about him, that leadership aura, and he does take baseball very seriously. But the way he plays the game and the ability he's able to play the game, that Dansby slide, where he's able to slide, come up and come up throwing and throw guys out and save runs, is still remarkable to this day. And it's something that I think we all have not appreciated enough. Dansby Swanson's defense literally lends to the Chicago Cubs winning so many games and saving so many runs, or even if they do end up losing the game, a lot of times Dansby Swanson's defense stops it from being blowouts. So again, that is one of the things that I look at when I ask myself, has he lived up to his contract? Now, again, let's talk about this contract. His contract is $177 million with the Chicago Cubs. He signed it December 2022. His average salary per year is $25.3 million per year. And again, the projections of Dansby Swanson signing with the Cubs was that he was going to be a 4 WAR per year type of guy. Now, obviously, he hasn't been able to necessarily do that every season, whether it be due to last 2024's injury where he had a core injury and he tried to play through it, or whether that be some of the other times where he just hasn't looked himself at the plate yet, and still his defense has still come through majority of the time for the Chicago Cubs. So I don't know if he's lived up to a 4 WAR type of guy. I would say maybe a more of a 3 WAR, maybe probably around a 3 WAR type of player. Wins against replacement is what WAR is for anybody that doesn't understand. Sorry, I'm getting a little analytical on you, but these are the measurements that we use to measure whether or not a player has lived up to what they're supposed to be. So again, Dansby Swanson, probably more in my eyes, maybe he's lived up to around a 3 WAR type of guy. Again, we have to ask ourselves, though, has he lived up to the contract? His offense is solid, but not elite given the cost that we are paying him. Remember, it is Swanson, outside of Jason Hayward, is probably one of the highest paid Cubs, not probably is one of the highest paid Cubs of all time. Not of the modern era, not of the 2000s, not of the 2010s, of all time. So, like I said, when you look at that type of contract, you look at that type of deal, and you realize, like I said, that his bat just has not lived up to it. It's been solid, but it has not been elite. You ask yourself, like, man, like, I mean, did you make a mistake signing him? That's the one thing you question. His strengths, let's look at Dansby Swanson's strengths. Obviously, defense, durability, mostly, and then his leadership. These are things that he does very well. These are things he did well in Atlanta. These are things that he does well here in Chicago. His weaknesses, obviously, his batting average. His batting average will hover around 240 for majority of the season, which you say, oh, why is it around 240? Well, because sometimes it will drop lower than that. We saw Dansby Swanson's batting average drop almost to about 210, 215 at certain points this season. When he slumps hard, and it makes it tough for the Chicago Cubs to get through. And I mean, like, it literally, we saw Dansby Swanson hitting in the 5 hole for a long time this season, and we begged game after game for Craig Counsell to move him back later into the batting order. And once he did, he began to flourish again, to take some of that pressure off of him with runners in scoring position, and to put that on somebody that could alleviate that and work with it. And I mean, it ended up being Carson Kelly that ended up taking that spot. And then, like I said, I mean, so I don't know how much of an improvement that was, but at the same time, again, we have to ask ourselves, was it worth it? And so, like I said, his Dansby Swanson fits the right now for the Chicago Cubs. We know that for certain. Does he fit the future of the Chicago Cubs? Remember, he still has 4 years left on his deal. Does he fit the future of the Chicago Cubs? And when you look at this in a vacuum sense, I would have to say yes. I believe Dansby Swanson still does fit what the Chicago Cubs are trying to accomplish even in the years to come. You need somebody that is going to be an elder statesman in that locker room. I do not suspect the Chicago Cubs are going to offer another contract to Ian Happ. I'm just, like I said, and if they do, it's going to be one that he probably not going to sign, because it's going to have a lot of different, a lot of different, different type of different negotiations in that contract. It won't just be kind of more pro player. I think Chicago Cubs are going to be very risky with what they want to do with Ian Happ next, because again, you do have Owen Casey, you do have Kevin Alcantara waiting in the wings. So with knowing that, knowing and understanding that, you have to also say, Ian, you're kind of blocking what we want to do next. So again, that no, if he didn't have that no trade clause in his contract, guarantee you Ian Happ probably would have been traded a season ago. But since he does have that, the Chicago Cubs can't do anything with it. Now, with that being said, Dansby Swanson, on the other hand, does, with his defense and the way you have him and Nico Horner playing with each other out there up the middle of the field. Yeah, I mean, it's a work of art. It's a beauty. Dansby Swanson gets the stop. Nico Horner goes over the second, over the first to Michael Bush, double play. You get, I mean, Pat Hughes says it probably 150 times at the least. Every single season we hear that. So, I mean, again, you have to realize and appreciate when you have a middle field that basically swallows up the ball, where between it's a triangle between Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson, and then the black hole out there in the middle, as I like to call them, Pete Crow Armstrong. So when you look at this, you realize that these guys literally do so much together and work so well together. So, but again, I want to ask you guys, I want your thoughts. Would you continue this contract of Dansby Swanson? Has it been worth it enough for you to continue this contract? Or do you think the Chicago Cubs should look to potentially move on from Dansby Swanson, considering you have so many other options coming from AAA that could be your second baseman? You move Nico over to his natural position, which is actually shortstop, and then move on from there. Or do you want to keep the elder statesman as a clubhouse leader, as a team leader, and as somebody that is able to guide your younger players? Again, like I said, the year's dollars and his expected performance also are something to look at. So I want to know you guys' thoughts on the years that we offered him, the amount of money he's paying, which is 7 years, $177 million for a contract for him. And then again, his expected performance, which was a 4 WAR, which I would say he's probably lived up more to a 2 or 3 WAR player for the seasons. But again, like I said, you still look at his defense and his defense in the playoffs. That's what you go get a Dansby Swanson for. You go get a Dansby Swanson for the postseason. The guys on Marquee Sportsnet covered that. That's what you go and you sign a Dansby Swanson for. Like, yes, he will have games, great games during the regular season. Yes, he will have bad games during the regular season. A lot of that stuff was covered up in Atlanta because they were winning and they had hitters, so they didn't need Dansby Swanson to hit so far up in the batting order. But Here in Chicago, we need Dansby Swanson to hit. We need Dansby Swanson and Matt Shaw to hit. If they're going to play, they have to hit. Point blank, period. That's the only way the Chicago Cubs are going to win. So, is it worth it? Is it worth it? In my eyes, this is what I look at. Dansby Swanson does bring value to the Chicago Cubs. But for the price, the Cubs do actually expect more from him. And again, I think 2024, he played injured a lot of that season. 2025, we did see an uptick in his home runs. We did see, like I said, more of what you saw in Atlanta from him. And then the postseason, like I said, he was a stalwart in the postseason defensively. Offensively, we could have used a little bit more from him. But I mean, again, it's just what happens. So what next? What's next is we need Dansby Swanson in 2026 to come bring this version, which I think was the best version of Dansby Swanson, to the team. Overall, I would grade Dansby Swanson on his actual regular season, not including postseason, just regular season. I would give him a C+ on the season. Dansby Swanson, his defense at times was elite. At other times, like I said, it wasn't. And that's why he's not up for a Rawlings Gold Glove right now with the rest of his teammates that are all expecting to potentially be in play for one. So again, like I said, we'll see what happens. 2026, he needs to validate this deal. He needs to validate it offensively and defensively. If he can give us more home runs, obviously he was healthy pretty much this whole season. If he can stay healthy all next season, give us more home runs. And just like I said, it's just more, finding green spots, out in the outfield and driving in runs, I think would be good for Dansby too. If Dansby could up his RBIs and maybe hit an uptick in home runs, get about 26 to 27 home runs, I think that then you would look at this contract a lot more favorably. Again, his defense, he had a couple of mistakes defensively that ended up causing errors, but at the end of the day, again, Dansby Swanson pretty much was still Dansby Swanson on the defensive route. It was offensively where he struggled. So, like I said, again, I want to know what you guys think, though. What do you guys want from Dansby Swanson in 2026? What would you grade Dansby Swanson's 2025 season? I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Chicago Cubs Central. Remember, this is your number one spot for all things Chicago Cubs. Until next time, I'm your host, Mike Jones. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for watching another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, the number one spot for all Chicago Cubs content. Remember to like, share, subscribe for more Cubs content.